I would like to extend my greetings to all of you, Mr. Chairman of the Parliament, members of the Parliament. It's my pleasure and privilege to perform before you today and provide you with whole information about the activities of the Foreign Ministry of Georgia during the current year. I will not only speak about the success that Foreign Ministry had, but I will also acquaint you with our future plans and prospects. I believe you do know that we live in a dynamic world today, which is ever-changing, and during the year, a lot of things have changed dramatically, which command from us quick adaptation with the new circumstances. These 10 main goals which we elaborated are tailored to these new needs and opportunities within the frames of 10-year plan, which we recently also performed before you. And the strategic plan, which was endorsed quite a while ago by the ministry, it is in full accord with the program of Georgia's government and the relevant resolution of the Parliament of Georgia with regard to foreign policies and with our constitution, of course, which implies full-fledged integration of the country with Euro-Atlantic space. These 10 goals and objectives are our action plan. They are incorporated in our action plan. And the main goal is, I believe you do know, in 10-year prospects for 2030 to start deoccupation of the country and irreversibility of this process. It is necessary to have a tangible progress on this to achieve restoration of Georgia's sovereignty and integrity of the country. Another ambitious reason and goal, which also is well known to you, this is to deliver our application for membership to the EU in 2024. We need a lot of work to do before we gain the status of a candidate for membership in the EU. Another main goal is to act according to the action plan with our relationship with the NATO, which is also full-fledged membership of the NATO on a long run. Another goal is a strategic partnership with the United States and increasing our relationships to bring it up to their perfection. It will be based on alliance relationships, trade, economic components also involved. The fifth goal is with the European countries, with the EU member countries as well as non-member countries within the existing formats, to turn all of those formats to strategic formats. Many of those are already well elaborated and schemed, and our goal is to make all European countries our allies so that they see clearly our main function, our main goal of integration with the European family. Another goal is balanced partnership relationships with the neighborhood countries, beneficial policies to all of those countries. Of course, the next goal is deoccupation to restore integrity of the country, and then normalization with our northern neighbor only after arranging their territorial issues. This to start negotiations with the EU on future ascension, which is also very important because to clear-cut the role and function of the Georgia as a bridge between East and West. Their ninth goal is active economic diplomacy, investments, transport and energy preferences, improving export condition, and also diversified export markets and providing those markets. And the 10th goal, the strong diaspora, strong educational and cultural centers abroad, and of course, protection of the rights of our citizens. Of course, the developing of this 10-year plan needs inner consolidation of political spectrum of the country, because I believe that these goals are in complete accord not only with the government of Georgia but with the opposition as well. And dwelling on that, of course, we won't be able to achieve our goals unless the whole society of the country is involved in these actions and their consolidation, which is also paramount. I also already mentioned that it is a quickly changing geopolitical situation, particularly in our neighborhood, and let's remember those events unfolding there. But there are also potential opportunities which we need to use actively. And I'm so proud to emphasize that during this last year, despite many serious challenges and pandemic, of course, our diplomatic service managed to achieve quite tangible and important results and portrayal of those results to the whole society, of the population of the country. I would like to present in a thorough detail each of those goals and whatever achievements we have on those. So the occupation of the country, this is number one goal of our diplomatic service, and of course it was focused on achieving this goal by means of certain steps. So that in 2021, June 23, according to the decree of the government of Georgia, the governmental commission was set up, which will, in the nearest future, present the strategy of the occupation and restoring integrity of the country. This is a nationwide process in which the legislative body of the country as well as the executive branch, they are all involved in this, NGOs and many other organizations, because we need consensus, we need the common steps which would bring us up finally to the occupation. The process has already started, and my deputy is chairing this commission with involvement of all relevant bodies and organizations, and we are on permanent communication with parliamentary relevant commissions and committees. And we will present the first project of the work of the Commission. Commission already visited different regions of the country. A lot of meetings have been held with the local governments as well as the experts. And in the near future, this all-nation process and this format, including the whole nation, will be presented before you in nearest future, which concerns the deoccupation strategy. And we will be open for all your notes, for all your recommendations, and we pledge for incorporation of your ideas in this strategic document. It depends on two directions, occupation and deoccupation, and the steps in this respect and the policy of involvement, engagement, which means sort of involvement of our citizens, each member of our population to be involved in this process so that to let them know all the benefits that the population may gain after sort of ascension to the EU. When I'm saying that this is an all-nation process, embracing all spheres of life of the country, of course, this contains a lot of challenges. Of course, the occupation force is against all that, and that's why we need the national consensus as well as involvement of the international community. One of the most important successes that we have had this year, this is on January 21, historic decision made by the European Court on Human Rights concerning the military activities and the intervention of Russia in Georgia in 2008. This document, this decision of the court, says that the responsibility on violations of human rights on those territories lies on the shoulders of Russia, mostly. Actually, it is for the first time in the history of independent Georgia that this question was sort of reviewed not only by different and numerous international decrees, but this is the decision which will enable us to take real steps for restoring sort of human rights, the occupation on the whole of the occupied territories by Russia. During the whole year, we were engaged in consolidation of the international community. We provided them with the thorough information about the facts of violation of human rights and the grave and heavy humanitarian conditions existing on occupied territories, kidnapping people, abduction of people, lots of other questions which we sort of made known in all formats of international activities and organizations, and a lot of decisions by the Council of Ministers of the EU and other organizations reacted to this. It was brought up to the highest levels of the countries friendly to Georgia, and the question of Russia and their behavior was actualized on all levels possible. I believe you do know that Switzerland is has taken upon a role of mediator between Georgia and Russia, and we sort of and our questions related to our country are regularly reviewed there on that platform. We also have very important reactions of the highest officials of the United States, Estonia, Slovakia, Sweden, the announcements of the foreign ministers of the above-mentioned countries, and 3 foreign ministers of the EU countries visited Georgia so that to deliver to the EU full-fledged information about the situation in Georgia with regard to the occupation. So we have not spared efforts to present these questions and issues on the highest level of the official bodies of European countries as well as the United States. I will simply mention and enumerate all those points which we have been engaged in. I will simply read to you this list of the resolutions, announcements, declarations, recommendations which have been issued with regard to Georgia's occupation on international format. Consolidated report of the Secretary General of the Council of Europe. This report was presented twice in the current year, in April and November, and it was broadly reviewed within the format of the Council of Europe and the decision of the Committee of Ministers of the Council of Europe. We are using this remedy, this tool, very actively for reviewing Georgia's problems. So the report of the Secretary General of the UN on Abkhazia and Southern Ossetia and on the status of the IDPs from the mentioned areas, parts of Georgia. We have mentioned many times that this is one of the most important directions of the Foreign Ministry. We are trying our best to achieve those resolutions so that they are supported by many countries. And this resolution within the format of General Assembly as well as the UN, we need those resolutions to be co-sponsors of those resolutions, so that we are gaining countries who then become co-sponsors of those resolutions, and then these resolutions become their own document for action. The last year, we gained 57 countries, and for UN resolution, we have 47 supporters worldwide. We are doing this each year, and the dynamic is thoroughly positive. The same way, the universal review of the UN within the format of third cycle, it embraces the heavy humanitarian situation, the description of the situation on occupied territories of Georgia. We have supportive announcements from the countries friendly to Georgia. We created the group of these friendly countries, dwelling on the fact that the Russian Federation, they violated the consensus all the way through. We thought it appropriate to set up the group of friends and to sort of speak in their name, to spread out, disseminate our opinion through these groups. So the joint declaration of the summit, so that was the first time that the Georgia's problems were portrayed and presented with such a highly acclaimed format. I would like to extend special thanks to the Committee on Foreign Affairs of the Parliament of Georgia. They have been very active in supporting us for sort of giving recommendations, and we have set up joint recommendations to deliver to foreign countries on Georgia-Russian sort of situation. The report of 2020 on religion issues by the UN, sort of the National Act on the defense, and the report of 2020 on human rights. This is a short list of the activities, of the results which we gained through our communication and relationship with the foreign offices, high-standing foreign offices. This has been done by means of this support and active involvement of Georgia's relevant offices and bodies. That's why we have gained this tangible result on a long run. And we paid special attention to the so-called unlawful detentions or arrests on occupied territories. You remember the Agacheladze case, and with the involvement of our foreign allies, we sort of achieved freeing this person from conviction. I pledge before you that this will be always on our agenda, and that will be our main aim to put an end to this shameful condition. Tatonashvili Otchozoria case, which implies that people involved in such illegal actions should be brought to legal answer. We have been engaged in not only one consultation so that these activities would be permanently continued, uninterrupted, in order to give objective picture of the situation on the occupied territories, which then enables us to consolidate the efforts of international community on this issue. And of course, the policy of non-recognition, which is one of the most important points of our foreign policy. I won't be able to speak thoroughly on this issue, but nevertheless, you do have proper information on this. And of course, Russian Federation is also not sparing efforts to sort of have success in this success in inverted commas on in a non-recognition policy. I believe you do know that since 2012 we have tangible results. 2 countries sort of denounced their recognition of our occupied territories. And of course, there are certain opportunities in order to continue these efforts for prevention of recognition. Of course, we're actively working and will work on the initiatives related to the project called Steps to Better Future. My colleague Teach Lediani spoke about it thoroughly yesterday. The clear-cut message to the rest of the world is that we need these people living on to actually inform all our society, all nation, about the benefits of the ascension to the EU as for trade, economic, and all other directions, and so that the people will be able to get education in our country. This is our offer. And one of the most important functions of foreign ministry is to make international community our allies in all directions which have been set up for the country. The Geneva format Geneva negotiations is an important format in this respect. Of course, Geneva has its endless function. We can speak about the benefits of Geneva, we can speak about the failures as well, and all the results that Geneva gave us. Of course, there have not been any important breakthroughs in the problem, but nevertheless, this is one of the international formats in which, together with our international allies, we are permanently speaking with our foreign friends and allies. And the sort of non-use of the force, the peaceful resolution of the conflict. In this, we don't have any progress. But if we support the narrative spread out, disseminated by Russian Federation that the negotiations are over, we cannot close eyes to the obligations that Russia has according to the ceasefire agreement of the 2008. We need to speak about it permanently. We have active consultations on this, and we will have more consultations with our future partners in order to get tangible results on a long run. Another sort of direction is to make an application on membership. This is one of the most important goals that Georgia has set up. I want this society, Georgia society, to know well that this is not only on the level of the declaration, but it implies heavy labor, heavy work, permanently, continuously, in order to achieve this goal. I must tell you that during this year we have made a lot of steps. Of course, all visits of highest level served to make one more step in this direction. Visits of foreign presidents, prime ministers to our country, as well as visits of Georgia's prime minister to foreign countries. I attended all 6 sessions of the EU on the all the sessions of the committee or association of Georgia's association. Actually, for us, for physical involvement and sectoral integration, it is very important to be participants of such sessions. One of the most important is to establish the so-called associated trio, which is a very important event in Ukraine. Together with my colleague, Ukrainian foreign minister, we established a memorandum which implies 3 associated countries, Georgia, Ukraine, Moldova. We do have tangible results in our communication. Of course, the principle of inclusiveness in Eastern Partnership organizations is very important, but we need to be, together and share the same, because we are sharing the same problems. We are also planning the visits of prime ministers in Brussels in this trio format. This format is now quite recognized in Brussels, and this will also be an extra leverage for us for getting more closer to the EU, the same Visegrad format, partnership countries, and we have had many meetings through video conferences. I also want to say a few words. Just a week ago, I came back from the Ministerial of Eastern Partnership. This was a preparatory meeting before the summit of Eastern Partnership that will be an event of paramount importance for us. It will take place in December of this year. In eastern parts of Europe, very important and grave events are unfolding, say, in Ukraine, and escalation of the situation in our neighborhood. Therefore, we will use this ministerial to the maximum in order to brief our friends in the EU about these circumstances in this part of the world. we made it even clearer, our choice for integration in the EU, and that's why we are aspiring to accentuating the role of the EU in settling the questions of occupation, or in other words, the occupation. And the project, so that the projects which have been already elaborated in this respect should be implemented practically, which will enable us, our citizens, to feel all the benefits on the level of their own families, which would be there as soon as Georgia ascends the EU. We already do have the association agreement on free trade. I must also tell you that this year the Governmental Commission on Integration with the EU has revigorated its actions. The action plan is already endorsed. What kind of steps we need to take for implementation of the resolutions of the EU, so that we are ready in this respect for the year 2024 within the format of the threefold format. We hosted in Batumi in summer presidents of Moldova, Ukraine, and we took a joint resolution which will also help us to make steps forward. We are also participants of different programs, Erasmus, Horizon, which enables us to be physically integrated, and of course, their sectoral integration. Our motto is maximum integration in all directions with the EU. In the nearest future, in a few days, on November 25, in Brussels, the renovation of the dialogue of Georgia and EU involving the questions of the Geneva formats will be very important, and the continued functioning of visa-free regime is also very important. I believe you do know that the EU published a report on the situation on the borders. We are not sparing efforts not to increase the number of Georgia's population aspiring to stay in European countries through these visa-free opportunities. And actually, the Parliament is involved in this coordinated work, and you really deserve thanks for that. 17 countries of the EU declared Georgia as a safe country. And the last result, again, of paramount importance is related with the COVID and COVID green passports. This was a result of which was endorsed by the EU on Monday, and according to this resolution, our citizens not only have the right of visa-free travel through European countries, but having this passport will be recognized internationally, and it will not be a hindering point for them for traveling anymore. And the integration with the NATO, this is also a priority, of course, and for providing this, we were engaged in many visits, many talks, participation with the James Rice visit and his substitute Javier Colomina. These visits were really very important from the NATO high officials. and we sort of achieved that the essential package with Georgia's relationship with the NATO has been endorsed by NATO, and within the BSEC countries, the Black Sea Basin countries, we also have important achievements as for cooperation. Georgia is an aspirant country, participated in the report on NATO. The fact that Georgia is involved in this report is a good testimony to the fact that Georgia is an important ally to this organization, and I more than believe that Georgia's problems will be broadly viewed by the alliance, and the alliance is devoted to the decision, to the Bucharest summit decision that Georgia will be the NATO member. So the NATO summit of 2021 was ended by the communique which reflects Georgia quite substantially, and there were the rumors that Georgia would not be invited to this summit, or Georgia would not be mentioned in this summary document, but the reality proved to be contrary. Georgia was reflected in this document quite broadly. I would like to draw your attention to a number of definitions. So it was decided that Georgia will become a NATO member country. New inscription was there, which had never been before, so that the allies support Georgia's sovereign right to choose and select their own foreign priorities. And any involvement of a third country will be ruled out. This is a very serious result, of course. So the review of Georgia's question in NATO on such a high level, intensive level, and we are now intensively preparing ourselves for the Madrid summit. I received quite recently sort of the invitation, together with my Ukrainian colleague, to NATO ministerial in Riga. And of course, we will present all our successful steps with regard to integration. Our sort of activities and involvement in Afghanistan, of course, Georgian military servants, they contributed a lot I would like to use this opportunity to give tribute to our 32 heroes who lost their lives in this campaign. And I believe you do know that together with our NATO partners, we entered this operation together, and we left the operation also together quite recently. And Georgia played a paramount role in two phases of Afghan campaign on military level as well as civil level. This is very important, this contribution of a small country to be so much active in this combat for democracy. A lot of reports were drafted on that. So Georgia turned into a certain hub, when NATO decided to withdraw from Afghanistan. During the end of the NATO campaign, Georgia assisted to withdrawing more than 5,000 militaries from Afghanistan peacefully. We also elaborated the 13th annual report on our activities. This is an important document. It is identical, in fact, with the action plan. And our partners all recognize whatever is written in this action plan, 13th action flash, this is a plan for actual practical actions and steps. We need to be ready for the moment when the decisions, final decisions, take place on NATO, on the accession of our country to NATO. In October, we elaborated the document on self-assessment of our program of 2021, and at the end of the year, the alliance will also elaborate the document on assessment, and I believe it will be as positive as the results of those 6 sessions which have been held this year with NATO. I also told you that our relationship, strategic as well as ally relationships with the United States is very significant. Whatever cooperation we have in the field of defense and deterrence, we want to bring up all those actions and goals and objectives to the highest level possible. Because during, it should be emphasized that during 1 year, Georgia hosted the Secretary of the State, Mike Pompeo, in Georgia. We discussed essential questions with him. Of course, he was presenting the previous administration, but our relationship with the U.S. is continuous, uninterrupted. Very soon, I was one of the foreign ministers among all those ministers with whom the Secretary of the State made a telephone call with us. This was an important call before withdrawal of the troops, U.S. troops from Afghanistan. This call means to what extent important the United States consider Georgia's role. We discussed all directions of defense as well as the challenges in that respect, economic challenges, etc. And I confirmed that U.S. is the most reliable and the closest partner to Georgia in this region. And of course, I also expressed our willingness to enhance these relationships and communication. If we take in mind how much time was allocated to this work, what kind of memoranda were set up, it gives additional weight to the visit of Lloyd Austin, which is an incumbent Minister of Defense of the United States. And of course, we presented initiatives on enlarging, invigoration of our relationships and the relevance of Georgia's military force with the NATO standards and our work which we are conducting in this respect. Of course, on behalf of the visits of the American high officials to Georgia, Philip Ricker and his visit has been quite notable. On this, he traveled in Georgia and he acted as a mediator in this region between and among Georgia, Armenia, and Azerbaijan. This is a very good endeavor, actually, for sort of portraying the role of Georgia more vividly in this region. And this step, of course, enabled us to continue our actions as for the freeing, releasing Armenian citizens and delivering the the map of Mind territories. Erika Wolson's visit was also quite notable. She's an assistant to the Secretary of the State of the United States on Caucasus and Eurasian areas. And of course, we did our best to clear-cut our function in this region in this certain context. And the support to the Congress, the Senate, we actually hosted very high-standing delegations of our friends from the United States, Jean Shaheen and Ron Portman, senators visited us. And on February 8, unprecedented legal act supporting Georgia was initiated second time in the American Congress. And I believe that this legal initiative, as well as the program, the draft of the program on fiscal sort of support issued by the United States, all those documents are the result of our productive cooperation with the government of the United States. We also signed this year a memorandum on security of 5G networks, which is very important for developing further our economic relations. It is an unprecedented, of course, unprecedented cooperation on COVID-19 issues, and the help issued by the United States proved to be of highest significance. The sort of the help issued by the United States, more than $1,026 million, the 500,000 Pfizer vaccines delivered free as a gift to the country. And this help is really invaluable that we received from the United States. Quite recently, we hosted the flagship, American flagship from the United States to Batumi. It is Mount Whitney, an historic sort of ship. This was, of course, not only historic visits of this type, but it also proved enhancement of Georgia-U.S. relations in the military field. Of course, our main point and focus is our trade and commercial relationships with the United States, and the planned sort of activities have not been yet exhausted completely, which had been set up, but we more than believe that the investments from the United States will be increased, particularly from the point of view of defense and safety. And I must tell you that the Consulate General was opened, Georgia's consulate was opened in San Francisco, which is mostly serving sort of attracting investments to Georgia, and this direct communication with the high-tech companies is, of course, very important for Georgia's economy. And we have, with the involvement and participation of JITA, Georgia's investment company, or American investment company in California already allocated 500,000 American dollars as an investment for supporting the activities of this newly established fund, and of course it will be increased. They want to open their office in Georgia, serving the whole of the Caucasus. And so the main ambition that we have is to make European countries, United States, our allies, our true allies, by showing them the role and the activities that we are sort of performing for engagement with these countries. We are doing this through numerous visits, and it will be continued. This year, President made bilateral visits with Austria, Northern Macedonia, France, Prime Minister's visits to Belgium, Spain. He participated in the climate summit in Glasgow, and we sort of made a lot of meetings with presidents and prime ministers of foreign countries, and my visits also, which have been done for the reason of turning our relationship into strategic format. We hosted the presidents of Ukraine and Moldova in Batumi. We also hosted the Prime Minister of Ukraine to Georgia and many others. And actually, the visits of the foreign ministers of Lithuania, Romania, Sweden, and my visit to Slovenia took place. And this is important because Slovenia is a chairing country of the EU this year, and it was very important to establish direct communication by exchanging the ideas with the chairing country of the EU. We had many visits to Denmark, Croatia, the Czech foreign ministries, and many others. And in near future, we are planning consultations with Serbia and Northern Macedonia. I would like to emphasize a sort of enhancement of our involvement within the new format of the foreign ministers. It was in Bucharest that, together with my colleague from Ukraine, we took part in the ministerial of Romania, Poland. This was the first time that the importance of Black Sea area, Black Sea Basin countries was emphasized. Wardrobe dialogue, main priority dialogue, this program that we have with the UK. Twice we had telephone call and a distance sort of conference with my British colleague. This year we were unable to make physical sort of meeting, but it is planned, it will take place. I would like to especially thank our British colleagues and allies with the UK in military field mostly. It was this year that a British military ship HMS Defender visited us in Batumi, and we are also involved in many other strategic formats. And this year, the accents were made on economic accents. We quite recently hosted the delegation from the UK, mostly projected to mostly economic issues, and several important ideas were put forward on investments. France twice allocated financial help, aid to Georgia, 7 million as a grant, and 46 as 346 as a support fund. We actually established with Germany, Georgian-German business dialogue, and a number of meetings have already been conducted. We were unable to visit physically Germany, but by means of video and audio connections, we are, of course, in communication. Actually, our parliamentary delegation is in Ireland, and high-level strategic dialogue, which we renewed with Ukraine. We had unprecedented activities, active relationship with Ukraine this year, visits of our Prime Minister, Ukrainian Prime Minister to Georgia, my visit to my colleague, the participation of Ukraine with Georgia in a number of international events. And actually, it was for the first time that Georgia took part in the so-called Crimea group. This is very important because we have common challenges with regard to occupation, with regards to actually military intervention. And the Ukrainian Prime Minister emphasized of all those points. Georgia is will be a chairman country for Guam countries. And in New York in September, within the frames of UN Assembly, I met the participants of this format. And we will also get together at the ministerial, and in that format our cooperation will be revived. With our neighboring countries, of course, we are mostly projected to common actions, and in 2021, steps made by Georgia are quite outspoken on this relationship, the escalation of military actions which took place in the region. We made thoroughly balanced policies in this regard, concerning mostly the transport sort of connections, transportation of transport of humanitarian cargo, and our active communication with our both neighbors within the format of 3+3, which has become quite active lately, and the initiatives and Georgia's possible involvement in this format. I had meetings with our Turkish partners as well as Azeri colleagues and the Armenian colleagues. And when Iran foreign minister was visiting Georgia, we also discussed this point. We won't be able, this is a geopolitical project, but Georgia will never take part in any sort of gathering or group where our aggressor country is participating. I voiced this issue quite loudly in our meeting in my meeting with the Turkish side as well as Armenian. Of course, it is the wish of our Western partners, and we have discussed it quite often with our American colleagues, European colleagues. There should not be any space where the West would not be a participant. We are offering an alternative. What is our alternative? This is the initiative which we put forward. This is 3+3, so that Tbilisi would be a platform for dialogue among these three Caucasian countries. Of course, we don't have the ambition so that Georgia, with regard to political or conflict issues, so the demarcation, delimitation, sort of dispute which is between these two countries. Of course, we don't have the ambition of being involved in this process, in this dispute, but we have an ambition to offer to our neighbors economic projects which would help our neighboring countries to remove or mitigate the tension which is there, which would assist to establishing long-term peace in these countries. With this issue, we are involved with Turkey, with different mega projects, Adriatic, Trans-Anatolian projects, Baku-Ceyhan pipeline, etc., because the Caspian region is the source of energy, etc. This is also beneficial to our Armenian partners to join this union of three, because the Caucasian countries should be most active in deciding and resolving the problems existing in the Caucasus. We need to speak about transit, about transportation, about tourism. This is our wish. We don't want to be involved in discussing the hypothetical projects which have geopolitical significance only. Of course, it's absolutely clear, and we don't want any extra speculations on this. Our Prime Minister voiced quite loudly from the UN rostrum initiative on creating a peaceful neighborhood in this part of the world that would put an end to this discrepancy existing in the Caucasus. On November 15, when I was in Brussels on ministerial on Eastern Partnership, I spoke to two of my colleagues. Of course, I have links with them by telephone permanently, but we spoke at this event on the issues that should be discussed, that should be done and resolved in the Caucasus. And I met, the response from them was quite positive. But we don't want to be in a hurry, because the swift decisions and swift actions may not be positive on a long run. We need to be very cautious not to damage the process of our regional cooperation. I must also tell you that our strategic partnership with Turkey, our neighbor, sort of was brought up to the highest strategic level. I visited Turkey, and then it was followed by the state visit of the Turkish sort of side. So the state visit is the highest level of relationship, and I believe you all remember how warmly Georgian Prime Minister was received in Turkey. All those economic relations, transport potential, increasing our role in the region, it should be valued properly, and we have many more prospects of development in this part. Georgia's Prime Minister visited Azerbaijan twice. First, within the format of governmental commission, which was seized for 11 years. It was renewed. And we also sort of clear-cut our position on a number of issues, regional issues, and not only. And the Pashinyan, Armenian Prime Minister, Nikol Pashinyan visited Georgia, which was also a good sort of sign of our friendly relations. Actually, the escalation of relations between our two neighboring countries has not stopped. It is still there, yesterday, today, and we have never dropped out from their negotiations, from talks on the demarcation issues. But this is the main issue that they are in combat for. And but Georgia also has those problems, and very soon we will come back to these issues as well, but not now when these two countries are engaged in military encounter. Actually, of course, we are aspiring to deepen, to enhance our relations with the countries of Oceania, as well as Asia and so on, Middle East. Pandemic is, of course, sort of hindering all those relations and all those aspirations, but we still tried to gain maximum results. So it was for the first time in the history of Georgia's independence that high-level delegation from India visited Georgia, and this delegation brought with them the fragment from the grave of Saint Queen Ketevan to Georgia. That was a token of warm friendship and attitude of India to Georgia. We also talked concretely about the number of issues. I believe you do know that the Asian countries also have dialogue with the EU. We are engaged in the same dialogue with the EU, and it is preferable that we join most of the points of these dialogues, considering that, given that Georgia is a bridge between East and West, and this opportunity should be used, this location of Georgia should be used to the best of our interests. And this vaccination process, which was conducted in 3 steps, China delivered almost 3 million doses of Sinovac vaccine, and our ministry was involved, the Georgia's health ministry together with NCDC were involved in this exchange. And Korea delivered humanitarian aid to us amounting to $400,000 American for purchasing medical equipment. Japanese government allocated grant assistance aid to Georgia. One of they delivered electrocardiographs and defibrillators to Georgia, very important medical equipment. Our relationship with the Gulf countries from economic point of view is also important. We made bilateral visits, and we are expecting and waiting eagerly for the World Exhibition in Dubai, where we will be able to show to the rest of the world Georgia's opportunities in this regard. And the president of the foreign minister of Austria for the first time visited Georgia, and we also discussed the opportunities for enhancing our trade and economic relations. I also would like to touch upon a number of directions. Actually, the format of the UN and the Security Council, these opportunities should be used more actively by Georgia. Actually, it was for the first time that Georgia's problems were initiated and discussed in UN Security Council format, and we saw as a result condemning announcements of the members of the Security Council with regard to the military intervention of Russia of 2008 in Georgia. And Georgia's delegation also delivered the facts, because Russia is malusing the sort of consensus regime, and they are blocking all initiatives with regards to Georgia. we managed somehow to increase the group of members to Georgia, sort of the number of this group, which amounts to 17, and they are supporting all Georgia's initiatives as for security in our country. We hosted the largest observer missions of OSCE, ODR to Georgia to observe election process in Georgia. As a rule, these renowned organizations, they never observe the elections for local government, but it was unprecedented. So the director of the ODHR never goes to local elections, but this year, this visit was made for the first round of our elections, local elections. I mentioned consolidated report. More than 100 recommendations were issued by these international organizations. I also must mention our initiative, which I am proud of. This year, we managed to present 3 candidates in the most serious world organizations, sort of the Secretary General of the World Tourist Organizations, is second time already elected. Our judge, Georgian judge, was elected in the European Court of Human Rights, and Sofia Kiladze, who is for UNICEF, a member of this UNICEF. This is a very complex process because we are a small country with quite a number of restrictions, because sometimes other countries need support, etc. That's why you need to calculate your resource to be positive with many countries. And I must really thank all our representatives in foreign embassies, all our diplomatic corps, so thoroughly involved in these actions. It is very often that the role of our embassies and the ministry, maybe we are less active as for PR, but I nevertheless want our society to know all those priorities and directions in which our embassies are involved, with quite tangible results. 25 business delegations visited Georgia this year with business fora. We had 17 online business meetings with Malaysia, Japan, Bulgaria, in Bern, Vilnius, Doha, Madrid, London, San Francisco. We arranged international exhibitions, festivals, conferences. In all these events, of course, the role and contribution of our foreign ministry is great. As for attraction of foreign investments, we are also highly involved. This is manifested by infrastructural and logistic projects which we sort of developed, very important logistic terminals, and construction of those terminals will start in ports and in Uzbekistan, in the United States. American company Tramo is now has recently opened a terminal also in Georgian port, which contains hundreds of millions of investment, and this is the best example of Georgia manifesting Georgia's role as a connection hub between East and West. We are also involved in quite large energy projects. Japanese company STEPCO purchased 27% of shares in a Georgian energy plant within the project of the construction of a five-star hotel Crown Plaza. We are also involved in this project. Czech Republic has started the development of a very important investment project. One of the most important directions is ITs and being involved in the prominent IT projects. And I believe you do know to what extent the Czech Republic is rich in specialists as for IT technologies, and one of the most important Czech IT companies started its operations in Georgia. A Swiss company in agriculture also sort of realized several million projects in our agriculture. Belarus company entered Georgia with a dairy company producing dairy products. The tea plantations were built, and southern African farmers opened agro market selling beef, and one of the greatest in Qatar, in the largest hypermarkets, you will find Georgian production on the shelves. And this was the result of our keen involvement with this country. Together with JITA, we signed a joint memorandum. And this is in Georgia, the first venture investment fund will be established in Britain under the initiative of British officials, and the Georgian embassy. A new project has started, and in 1 month, more than in funding startups, and more than 30 startups from Georgia now involved in this project, and they received their funding. And the armored cars produced by Delta, this is the enterprise in Georgia plant, and the Didgori sort of armored car was sold already to Qatar. And of course the press tours, our embassies have planned quite a number of press tours. In the tour operators were gathered still from prominent countries of Europe as well as Asia, discussing the opportunities for enhancing tourism. Again, in 2021, we sort of signed an agreement with Japan on the reciprocal activities, and we are working on reviving free trade with Israel. So the priority with actually we will support the electric sort of pipeline under the Black Sea to Romania, and actually the projects posed by the World Bank and realization of these projects are underway in Georgia, and our embassies are involved actively in sort of enhancing straight airlines. And the last direction is the strong diaspora, the educational and cultural centers abroad. So the relationship with the diaspora is one of the main priorities for Foreign Ministry of Georgia, and we have made many meetings with Georgian diaspora with involvement of the President, the Prime Minister, and we are together with the parliamentary Foreign Committee, we are almost in synchrone working with this committee. We sort of made the conference with Georgia's diaspora, which was really successful. We had a ceremony of awarding most active members of Georgia's diaspora. We established grant programs which are very popular among our citizens living abroad. And of course, we will increase funding for that project. Another sort of proposal, successful program, Be the Young Ambassador to Your Country, which is very popular already. And new projects have been set up for supporting the ensembles of Georgian song and dance abroad, because wherever we go, our members of our diaspora, they are always ask us to fund such opportunities for cultural relationship. And the practical guide of migration was prepared in print, which helps us or will help us, our diaspora, to guide their activities. And the sort of the first phase of the project of providing the migrants with living areas, and the sort of in Leville, we already finished the first phase of reconstructing the Leville estate as well as a cultural center there, and the whole venue was delivered for further maintenance to the Ministry of Culture of Georgia. Of course, we are also in communication with international partners, with many other projects, with GIZ, USAID, etc., in order to find new ways of providing involvement our diaspora and cultural centers abroad for the benefit of our diaspora. I must tell you that according to today's data, we have 77 missions, diplomatic missions of Georgia worldwide. It's a really large number for us. So that, and from there, we also cover many other countries as well. This is the opportunity that we have within the frames of our budget today. I would like to thank you for your support. I followed the review of the budget in the parliament, and I'm very thankful, grateful to you for your support, because for enlarging, enhancing our activities, of course, what we really do need budget. And actually we, of course, try to be satisfied by the resource which is already allocated. I also like, I would like to also thank my former colleague from opposition, Grigol Vashadze, who supported increase of the budget for our missions. We acquired 5 new missions during the last 6 years, which are already a property, Georgia's property. And if the budget gives us more opportunities for that, of course, we will try our best to have our own missions abroad. I must also tell you that Georgia's citizens have an opportunity to travel in 68 countries of the world without visas. This is an excellent opportunity because there are not many countries on this planet, of Georgia's size at least, which would have such a big and wonderful opportunity of traveling visa-less, so to say, throughout the country, throughout many countries. And of course, cultural diplomacy. I would like to really thank again the Committee of Foreign Affairs of the Parliament. We are in active cooperation because and the Ministry of Culture. because we are willing to show our culture, our treasure in foreign countries. I must tell you a number of sort of thank you for giving the title of a musical city to Batumi. Of course, this is a tangible result for making the name of our country better known worldwide. Georgia's National Library was delivered from Great Britain, the archive of Georgian General. In Korea, a big exhibition was arranged under the name of Georgia, Cradle of Winery, wine breeding, with testing Georgian wine. Within the frames of the visit to Vatican by the President of Georgia, memorandum on cooperation was signed with Vatican, and this year, under the financing of UNESCO, 4 projects were financed, $72,000 in total, and under the decision of the UNESCO, again, Tbilisi was announced as a book hub, and the Georgia's wetlands were entered into the list of immaterial sort of monuments, and on the UNESCO list, forests, Georgian forests as well, and the 100th centenary of the Academy of Arts of Georgia will be hold, and we need to prepare ourselves for the next Georgia book exhibition. This is the equal as of its scale with the Frankfurt Book Fair, so that Georgia will be portrayed duly on this as well. Thank you, David, for this vast and interesting. Approximately 20 questions have been registered. We can start. Beka Odisharia is the first on the list for questions. Now 3 o'clock is approaching us, and I would like to ask you to have a 5-minute break maybe after this. I would like to extend my greetings to you, Mr. Minister. Televisions which are announcing and multiplying the ideas about the Georgia, as this is the country who has so many milestones, such vast relationship with the Western world. They are still accusing us of our orientation to Russia, despite the fact that they themselves never refrain from traveling to Russia and being involved in different talks there, 30 more seconds. And do you sort of mean involvement of Georgia's diaspora in this respect, and how, if you do, and with this the project of migration, we are thinking on preparing the package. You mentioned a package of relationship with our diaspora, and maybe you will elaborate on that a little bit further. Givi Mikanadze is the next for posing question. Hello, I would like to extend my greetings to all your team. Thank you to this long but very interesting and important presentation. One question which I would like to pose, but you anyway answered it quite completely. This is 3+3 format. this is an important question because the radical wing of the opposition misinterpreted your announcements, your messages. I was going to pose a question on sort of explaining this further, but you already did so, and thank you for that. Your presentation touched upon many countries, but I still have some feeling that you were not very active on delivering Georgia's relations with Israel. I am chairman of the group of friendship with Israel. That's why I'm keenly interested what kind of communications have been made with Israel, because Israel, is for trade, tourism, is an important country for Georgia, and we need detailed information on that, indeed. Tamar Taliashvili, hello, Mr. David and your team. Thank you for all your actions accomplished by you and your team for these active formats and the success that you have achieved with the international formats. I also would like to emphasize that it's even a tragedy that that from the point of view of regional occupation within the country, there are radical forces which are trying to create, and they have created, additional crisis points, which of course is hindering us from achieving our goals. My question is with regard to the peace initiative. You mentioned briefly that was proposed by our Prime Minister Irakli Garibashvili. Also, actually, you mentioned this initiative to be proposed at the UN Assembly, and that Joe Biden at this assembly, Joe Biden mentioned the most important factor for establishing world peace, sort of regional relationships. I would like you to explain what is the prospects of this sort of initiative, sort of regional cooperation, which was emphasized by Joe Biden. Nodar Turzeladze comes the next. I would like to greet you, Mr. David, and the members of your group for this exhaustive presentation. It's clear what kind of a work, important work you have accomplished. My question is, we, the committee, we are planning to listen to the report on the grave situation created on occupied areas, and the 54th round of Geneva talks. It is well known what kind of issues were discussed there. This is illegal detentions of Georgian citizens, and they are freeing from conviction, and de facto annexion process, and the humanitarian problems which command for prompt resolution. I would like to know the position of your ministry and, of course, the society, Georgia's society, population are also thirsting for this information. What kind of tangible results we may expect, maybe for future, tomorrow or the day after, in future, or in nearest future, in other words. So my first question concerns the TV program, which we also, when they had Georgia's flag under their feet on that TV program. I would like, of course, an agreement very beneficial to Georgia's citizens. This program exists more than 10 years, But so far, Georgia has not benefited from this program yet. Maybe this is the lack of efforts that our embassies perhaps are not duly active. Sort of the example of Germany cannot be an example of success because it has started very recently, and even on that, there is a lot of discontent as for the employment. Of course, we wouldn't like our mothers, our sisters, daughters to do the same job as they do, or the same kind of job as they do in European countries. Of course, we want them to work more legally, more openly. You never mentioned the Davit Gareji problem in your presentation, and what is Foreign Ministry doing in that direction to resolve this question for once and for all? I would like to ask you about the announcements of the wife of Bestaev, the citizen which was returned to Georgia, but his spouse is accusing Georgia's government for being very slow in freeing him, and as a result, his health condition is now highly critical. There is an information that Bebua, who is still in detention, is not in good health either there. And the question which I posed yesterday, now I want to pose it before you. What is the ministry doing, or what are your actions for freeing Irakli from custody, and whether you are regularly monitoring his health condition? Hello, Mr. David. Thank you and your team for your efforts and for these outstanding results. We have heard a lot of innovations and novelties about your work. I would like to touch upon one of the most acute problem of our country. This is occupation, and you spoke quite vastly about your actions, what you are doing in this respect on international arena. Are you thinking of using any additional leverages for protecting the rights of our citizens on occupied territories, say education in their native language, or protection of our cultural monuments which are on the other side of the occupation line? And my question also concerns Euro integration. You said that this is number 2 priority for the 10-year action plan for the ministry, but opposition, it's very often which they disseminate provocative ideas to say that Georgia has deviated from the European route and it's no more our priority. In that respect, Mr. David, can you provide us with information with regard to different European fora, organizations, or which organizations you are planning to join in order to get free access to European market, in order to provide 4 types of services, which is trade, commerce, etc., and the economic diplomacy. And I will echo Beko Disharia's question. You said that you are conducting very often business fora as well as meetings for diversification of European markets, and to what extent representatives of our diaspora are presented in these actions. Mr. David Zalkaliani. Hello, Mr. David, and please take my gratitude again and again to you and the work of your team. I think we have heard today the best report ever of the ministry. As the number one diplomat of the country, you are guiding the diplomatic corps, a big family, in other words, of people who are provided by a large format of information, and from them, actually, I have heard about a lot of hardships with regard to their salaries, to their living conditions, etc. I must say that this is a profession which needs a lot of expenditures as for finances, as for time, etc. And a lot of time and funds are needed for rearing up or educating, in other words, the diplomats. We, therefore, don't have a luxury of losing these people thoroughly sort of knowledgeable of diplomacy because of financial hardships, because they are moving, so that there is a leakage of diplomatic sort of corps through other directions. What should be done by the ministry to eradicate this question? In order to formulate the second question of mine, please help me, Mr. Chairman. It's very good, on one hand, that your friendly countries sort of express some position on their behalf, on behalf of their respective countries. But very often, actually, without sort of taking in view ideas widespread in their countries, they are not, in accord with the ideas maintained by their own countries, and they express their personal ideas. For instance, how do you imagine that individual politicians or political organizations or NGOs imagine if they start, crying out that they are disappointed on those countries, the countries, they are, concerned with this text taken in this or that country. What can you do in order to somehow prevent distractions of these so-called friends, in inverted commas, from foreign organizations? Hello, Mr. David. I believe you do know that the EU actually, they established conditionality with us so that they sort of allocated financial tranches for the sort of reform of the judiciary. But quite recently, our government called this tranche or this financial aid as inappropriate or not needed, not necessary for Georgia. For instance, when actually without any reform, the members of the Supreme Court of Georgia were appointed, and the announcement of the country that the financial trench was not necessary for the country, you remember that the reaction of Europe was quite acute on this. Please confirm whether in 2020, in the debts that Georgia took, whether the needs for the judiciary reform have been reflected. Can you tell us openly, just like one of the members of the government here from the parliamentary rostrum, actually sort of this denial of this trench was not denial of a certain amount of money but denial of the proposal of the EU. You made working visits. What kind of sort of messages did you get from your meetings in Brussels, and how they sort of understand the events unfolding in Georgia? And can you confirm that Georgia still has a front-runner status in European conception? Mr. David, I will thank you for this long presentation. My question is, what happens in our neighboring countries, Azerbaijan and Armenia, from the point of view of delimitation? How the process is undergoing as for, marking the borders? Thank you. Irakli Beraya. Thank you, Mr. David. I would like to extend my greetings to you and your team. Thank you for this interesting presentation. I would like to express my special gratitude to our big team, big family of Georgian diplomats abroad who are not sparing efforts to protect Georgia's interests worldwide. We do know that Georgia has an impressive progress in NATO-Georgia relations, and this progress is recognized by all member countries of the alliance. Say the enhanced essential package, new measures of supporting Georgia. So the Secretary General, his announcements and the visits of NATO high officials to Georgia, as well as naval visits of the flagships. This is an indicator of NATO's positive attitude to Georgia. And Georgia is trying to behave as a responsible member of the alliance, and it sometimes does even more than particular members of the alliance. And of course, this is a good message that with Georgia, everyone sort of feels safe, more or less, and that the inscription in the last communique that not a single third country can influence Georgia's decision of accession to the NATO, and the threats increased by Russia in the Black Sea basin. Some minutes edited. And these commands for strengthening regional cooperation and the necessity of enlarging the scope of the NATO, on the other hand. To what extent this role of Georgia in all that, to what extent it confirms the sort of accession of Georgia to the NATO? Some more seconds, please. You are invited to Riga Ministerial, which is one more recognition of our progress and testimony to importance of Georgia for NATO. And what are your messages to Riga, and what are we expecting from this ministerial? Hello, Mr. David. I would like to greet the team of the Foreign Ministry. I believe you do know that UN actually ratified the additional agenda of the UN law on the people with restricted physical opportunities. In your speech, you emphasized correctly that the ambitious sort of message that we have to the EU, and that was the main point of our election program as well. Georgia's wish to be integrated with the EU, and this application that Georgia is going to produce for the year 2024. But people who are not, positive with these aspirations of Georgia, people with animosity to Georgia, they are trying to portray the situation as if it is unstable, it is unworthy, etc. How do you combat these damaging ideas or movement? I would like to actually welcome and salute your brilliant team, and it is your merit that you are guiding such a brilliant team of Georgian diplomats. You said that the Swiss president spoke to Russian president. If it is secret, please don't respond to this question. Of course, we see so many resolutions, recognitions, particularly this year by the UN. We see and hear about them, but we hardly have any tangible results from that. As for the occupation, the situation has not improved there. Is it possible that our partners would be more sort of decisive and strict in posing these questions before the government of the Russian Federation for improvement? Actually, let's ask our strategic partners, because if they are strategic partners, that they need to somehow enhance that strategy. Actually, what benefits may our association agreement with the EU, to what benefit it can be with our brothers in Abkhazia and South Ossetia? And we have adopted the rule on occupation. Is it possible that this law should be more protective to occupation rather than deoccupation? Now, with the policies of non-recognition, we need to be actually very cautious with this number of countries which are involved in this recognition process or non-recognition. Geneva format, you think that it is still necessary, but can't we think of setting up another format which would be more sort of productive? The occupation or some progress, to what extent the occupation is possible or progress in this without straight relations with the Abkhaz as well as South Ossetian governments or the local governments. Somehow, I think if the local governments, particularly nearby the demarcation line, if they are more active with the other side, maybe this will sort of put an end to these kidnappings or abduction of our citizens. As for diaspora, I think your team is working brilliantly well, the embassies. But unfortunately, we don't have an embassy in Russian Federation when we have about 1 million of our diaspora, and about 100 of them are millionaires, which we don't use in our benefit. We need to think of some mechanisms to somehow decide this question. David, please, I have 2 questions. We have heard not only once the announcements, not quite pleasant for us, from the from the ambassador of the United States to Georgia, from the administration of the US, about Mikhail Saakashvili, about some other situation in our country, or they depend their announcements on their wrong information delivered to them. What is your position? How we will apply to the UN, to the EU for further ascension? Maybe as an idea, someday, somehow, a long-term process for sort of substituting one currency into another, etc. Maybe we will start our movement to euro currency. Mariam? Hello, Mr. David, your team. Thank you for your work done. My first question concerns Eastern Partnership Program. You are back from the ministerial quite a few days ago, and we heard and saw the reaction because of the inclusiveness of this program, but differentiation on the ministerial as well as different meetings. We also heard the promises of Euro Commissioner Varhey as for investment projects, economic relations, and what are the prospects on this for Georgia? My second question refers one of the most important directions of these partnerships, digital sort of process, together with quick development of ITs. It's necessary that our diplomatic service should also act in this respect, and opening of our consulate in San Francisco, of course, is very much welcome, but digitalizing our diplomatic work is of high significance. Is there any plan for digital transformation? And if it is, please tell us about it. Teona Akubardia. Hello, Mr. David, and the professional diplomats within the country as well as abroad. Today, I have witnessed one more double reality when we are discussing these questions of highest importance, and in the halls of our parliament we have for NATO integration or EU ascension, etc. Were you sincere while speaking about Georgian NATO relations or Georgian EU relations and conflict resolution? Hello, Mr. David, and dear colleagues, friends. Your team are really extraordinary, and I would like to thank you for all your joint projects which have already been realized. Mr. David, my question is, I believe you do know well that abroad, international press is sort of engaged in extending blows to Georgia in prestigious journals and newspapers, Figaro, Le Monde, and many other journals and magazines. Are there any remedies for that in order to do it so that this disinformation will be sort of substituted by real information? Myself being the chairwoman of the committee, maybe in future you will be engaged in this work, and we as a committee, we are ready to be by your side in this. How do you imagine to somehow mitigate this problem or improve it? Hello, Mr. David. I confirm on my respect to you and your team for this very interesting news presented by you and your ministry, I believe that Euro Commission within the frames of visa liberation program, they prepared the recent recommendations on evaluation. This report was totally different from the previous three reports, because the steps made by Georgia's government were duly and highly emphasized. Now, what is your attitude and vision about the groundless sort of messages and announcements, and what are you planning to do against that? Mr. David, I have only 2 questions with very short answers. By your evaluation on the road of Georgia's integration, is Georgia closer to the goal of EU accession before 2021, or it has been improved, or situation is the same in this respect? And second question, whether you share your position on these representatives of American representatives, or the representatives of Lithuanian or representatives of other countries, their negative assessment of the situation, and the answer of Georgia's government to say that either these people need to prove their point, or they simply are people inclined unfriendly to Georgia. My question is about deepening Georgia's economic relationship with the United States. Of course, it's good, it's correct, but your assessment, how do you imagine all that? For instance, the events of July 5, or annihilation of 19 April agreement. If we remember the process with regard to the judiciary reform, when our allies from foreign countries, they called us for stopping this process of appointment of the judges of Supreme Court. Concrete vision, and what risks are contained in this for Georgia, and can you confirm that sort of participation of our country in any kind of form is absolutely unacceptable to our country? Hello, Ms. David. I would like to extend my greetings to your team for your thoroughly important and necessary report presentation. I would like to ask you, maybe from this high rostrum, which is the parliamentary rostrum in the country, actually the most important rostrum, in fact, to tell our society as clearly as possible that this line which your ministry and the government of the country have embarked upon, and the steps made will bring us to this large family, European Union, and our aspirations for the accession. I believe you do know that opposition, they are spreading out lies on that. And only one representative of a radical opposition was here, but this person has left the hall. It also indicates to what extent they are interested in this issue, in discussion of this issue. They don't attend this session. If they are interested in Georgia's future route, they should be here and oppose you. I would like to ask you to tell us, clearly and briefly what kind of success do you have and what kind of success we are proud of today, where we started, how we started, and where we stand for today. Fatuna Kwitsiani, hello. To begin with, thank you for this impressive report and presentation. I would like to wish you success, your team, and I believe that the information presented by you will be duly delivered by mass media to the population on those main points which you emphasized as for foreign policy. You said that the guidebook was prepared for repatriants. I would like also to thank you for your work done. I have several questions. I would like to continue Eliso's pathos about our citizens living abroad and information delivered to them. They have very scanty information about the things going on in our country, and they don't have the sources to learn more about the situation in the country. I would like to emphasize that you have done quite a lot of work in working with our diaspora, but part of our population are illegals abroad, and therefore we know almost nothing about their mode of life, to what extent they can enjoy the healthcare sort of measures. And I am willing to know whether the ministry is planning to make any kind of plans in order to increase their availability for the information or the services which a person may have in the 21st century. Thank you. Thank you, colleagues. The questions have been exhausted. Half an hour break, and then we will continue with the answers from the minister.